Good evening, Suffern Mounties. I'm Lisa Weber, Acting Superintendent for the Suffern Central School District. Thank you for joining us this evening. Our purpose tonight, as originally scheduled, was to talk a bit about the budget and a bit about our 5-year plan. Due to the events this weekend, we're going to take a few minutes before that to talk about our community. And I'd like to start with a moment of silence in memory of 10th grade student Jackie Zangrilli. This weekend's events have had a tremendous impact on our entire community. For the 4th time this year, we're experiencing the tragic loss of a student. In this case, the complications of other students being involved in the accident have made this a particularly complex and difficult situation. Over the weekend, as we learned more and more, our community, as they always do, came together. First, on Saturday, spontaneously, as many of Jackie's friends were coming out of lacrosse practice and finding out for the first time, spontaneously in the parking lot, many of Jackie's friends started to gather along with their parents and school counselors and administrators. On Sunday, we scheduled our formal grief counseling, and we had a number of students and many staff attend. We were assisted in our counseling by counselors from other districts, particularly from Rockland BOCES, and from other county agencies, particularly the Department of Mental Health. These outside clinicians coming in have been a tremendous support to our district. We will continue to provide counseling for our students, staff, and families for as long as it's needed. Our Suffern Central staff, of course, in some cases are also grieving, and so we want to make sure everyone is supported. Please, if anyone at home, students, want to talk, parents aren't sure how to talk about it, please reach out to your school counselors. Teachers, principals can put you in touch with the right people if you don't know who to contact. We're very appreciative of the support, just outpouring. Every district offered to send clinicians, every district in the county offered to send clinicians, Rockland BOCES, county agencies, County Executive Ed Day, Town of Ramapo Supervisor Michael Specht. All of them reached out, to really just offer whatever they could do. I've also been in touch a number of times over the weekend with the Ramapo Police Department, who have been incredibly supportive and working with the school district and the families, to do whatever they can. The spontaneous memorial at the site of the crash, students have been visiting for the last several days, bringing flowers, candles, field hockey balls, angels. It's really a beautiful memorial. Unfortunately, it's also really not a safe part of Route 202 to stand on. We really appreciate the Ramapo PD today. We're able to send over a police car who's been there basically all afternoon and will stay until dusk. However, Ramapo PD cannot supply a police officer at that spot on a continuous basis. And I went this evening. I will tell you, it is not a safe part of the road. I was there while the police car was there and the cones and the lights going, and there were still cars racing past. We all know that's a road that people drive very much too fast on. And it's really not a safe place. So I hate to do this, but I really have to discourage our students and families from going to the site of the accident just out of your own safety, because it's just not a safe part of the road to be walking on. So we are working with Ramapo PD. They're going to do what they can, but they are also advising not to attend that site. We encourage students to, find other ways to express their condolences and pay their respects. It's been a tough year and a tough weekend, but very proud and very grateful to be in a community that cares so much about each other. At every turn, there's been someone to support. This is too much for anyone to handle individually. I know myself, I'm very appreciative of the support I've received, people reaching out, and the only way we'll get through this is together. And I appreciate everyone, doing their part to support each other. So I am going to now turn our attention to kind of the business of today's Suffern Streams. I am joined by our Assistant Superintendent of Business, Mr. Steve Schleicha, who is going to take us through an overview of the budget. After that, I'll talk about some of the questions that came up relating to our return to the 5-day plan. And at that point, we will take any questions in the chat. For now, the chat's turned off so we can focus on the content. And when we get to the end of the presentation, we will open questions in the chat. Mr. Schleicha.
All right, thank you very much, Acting Superintendent Weber. I appreciate it. I will turn my screen on now so we can present, and you'll see our presentation, and we'll start to go over a little bit on the election and budget vote coming up on May 11th. Let's first turn our attention to the total proposed budget that was passed a few evenings ago by the Board of Education and put forward of $144,842,711. This is a very modest increase of just a little over 0.5%, 0.56% budget to budget. So that's this year to next year. And a very small tax levy increase of 0.98 or just under 1%. Let's turn our attention now a little bit to the election. And I just want to remind everybody that election day has changed. Election and budget vote day has changed to May 11th this year. And I want to point to your attention also in the middle of my screen, you'll see voting information, and there's a link on this. It says www.sufferncentral.org, and I'll hit this link. And I'm going to share a tab, and we're going to our school website. And if you take a look at our school website and you'll scroll down on the right-hand side, you'll notice it says Suffern Central School District Voter Information 2021-22 School Budget and Board Vote, May 11th. And you just click on this link, and it brings you to voter information. And you scroll down again, and you'll notice, I'll just talk a little bit. You'll see two links here in the middle of the screen, and I'm going to click on one of these just momentarily in just a second. But at first, I'll talk about, it gives you all of the absentee ballot information here first, and then it talks about the Suffern Central School District polling locations. And you'll notice all 5 locations are here in Sloatsburg, Hillburn, R.P. Connor, Suffern Middle School, and Cherry Lane. So those are all here as well for your viewing pleasure. Let me click on where to vote. Is everybody seeing this okay? Okay, now click on select town, and I'm going to click on Suffern, and I'm also now going to click on just Rose Hill Road, because that's one that we know. Just give me just 1 second, Rose Hill Road. You'll click on that and you'll notice it comes up and it tells you exactly where to vote. And if you also click on the map, it'll show you the map. So that's how you take care of that on our website. I'm going to stop sharing this tab now, and I'm going to come back and you'll see me, and then I will reshare my presentation. Here we go. Okay, I hope we're all right where we left off, and we'll go one more slide. And just a reminder too that everyone received this postcard in the mail, and even the date had changed from to be able to vote for the board election and the budget vote from May 18th to May 11th. We also made a boo-boo as well. We made a mistake. All absentee mail-in ballots, you can see the red arrow, are not due May 4th, but due May 11th. That is the final due date for everything. If you'll go back to our website, you'll also notice there's other dates there of May 4th, that when you can pick them up, and May 10th is also another deadline. So please read carefully and understand. Now, moving back into the budget, our anticipated expenditures for next year's budget are going to be $144,842,711. Again, we talked about just a modest increase of just over half of 1%, or a difference of about $808,000. And as we can see, basically the modest increase was basically due this year to debt service that was been reduced, and some special education costs that were reduced, that basically offset our increases in salaries and benefits for our next year. Now, where does the money go? As you can see, about 71% of our total budget is for salaries and benefits, which is fully expected in a school district, because we're in the business of teaching and learning, obviously education, and we do that by hiring teachers and support staff. So that's very normal for our salaries and benefits to be that high in a budget. And you can see our special education costs are about 6%. Debt service right now about 3%. Transportation is 7%. Buildings and grounds at 3%. Technology at a modest 2%, and other BOCES too, like summer school and things, are again 2%. And we do use transfers coming in from other funds and whatnot at about 1%. Now, anticipated revenues for next year, just briefly again, our budget is balanced. So you see $144,842,711 once again. And you'll see our total state aid numbers at the bottom of the page went from about 19.8 million to almost 5 million. Basically, most of the increase was about a $2.3 million increase in foundation aid this year. The Board of Education has chosen to basically reduce our use of reserves from approximately $4 million down to about $1.176 million, because we're going to take a conservative approach, which I think is a very good approach, because obviously right now a lot of federal monies are coming into the state budget. Approximately $12 billion went into the state budget to plug some holes to be able to provide us with the increase in foundation aid. So we're kind of worried right now about the longevity and sustainability of that money coming from the federal government to the state government and then to us as a school district. So kudos to the Board of Education for taking a very conservative approach, because again, we educate students and we like to have consistency, and we want to have a structurally balanced budget. What we mean by that is we want to fund our reoccurring expenditures, hence salaries and those benefits, with reoccurring revenues. Now, where does the money come from? As we just saw, our very generous taxpayers support us, and 78% of our total budget comes from our taxpayers and our real property taxes. So thank you very much to our taxpayers. 13% comes from state aid, 1% is building aid, 2% is BOCES aid. Our use of reserves is about 2%, and planned balance is 2%. So again, for a budget of $144,842,711 proposed for next school year. Now, Proposition 2, this has no effect on our taxes because we do have reserves, thank goodness. Again, planning has happened here in the Suffern Central School District. Right now, we're going out with Proposition 2 for about $4.8 million to replace roofs at the Cherry Lane Elementary School and the middle school. And we're going to be replacing some 2 old boilers at the R.P. Connor Elementary School. And that's going to be done over the next few summers. But again, no tax increase on this at all because it's all coming from our capital reserves. So if anyone has any questions about the budget and needs any further information, by all means, visit our district webpage at www.sufferncentral.org, or you can email me any questions that you have to budget@sufferncentral.org. I thank you very much. And at this time, I will pass the baton back to our acting superintendent, Ms. Lee Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Slaka. And I would add that if you're watching live, you can hold on for a few more minutes and you'll be able to put your budget questions as well as your 5-day questions in the chat. If you're not watching live, of course, please use the email on the previous slide. So we are very excited about our transition to 5-day-a-week learning. We have been at 4 days for a while. Some of our students have been 4 days all year, our kindergartners and our first graders. Many of our elementary students have been 4 days for now almost half the year. And we will now, our secondary students for about 2 or 3 months. And now we have the opportunity for all students to return 5 days. I'm not going to repeat the information I shared in last week's communication. I'm really just going to address a couple of the points that were raised in questions that were addressed to the communications email or people addressed with me directly. And really the big one, the one that most people were focused on is our determination that students need to either be all in person or all remote. And we put this in for a couple of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is just to provide consistency, really to provide consistency for students and for staff and for families. What we have not had over the last 15 months is consistency, and 14 months. And what we really need is some consistency. And in particular, we had many requests from parents who said, because my kid can remote in, it's harder to get them out of bed in the morning. They'll just, oh, oops, I missed the bus. And so we really had a lot of requests from parents that what could we do as a district to really help support kids going to school? And this is one way we can do that. We also had a lot of requests from our staff. And I'll share an example of, I was in a kindergarten classroom in the district a couple of weeks ago, and it's a class that actually all the students are currently 100% in person in. On that particular day, a student had stayed home. Because of that, the student didn't have any of the materials they needed at home. So the teacher, rather than teaching her class, we were there first thing in the morning, was actually busy taking pictures of all the work they were going to do and emailing them to the parent so that the child would have them. And while I commend that teacher for doing that, and it's what our Suffern Central teachers do, the ability of many of our students to flip-flop back and forth between, well, I'm in and I'm not, has created a real challenge, particularly with materials at the elementary grades, in encore subjects, just making sure kids have what they need to do what they need to do. And so our main reason is providing consistency. Of course, we know there will be extenuating circumstances. Of course, we're going to be flexible. We are still living in a COVID world. We still have challenges. I'll give you an example of some of the extenuating circumstances that we're already aware of and prepared to address. Starting AP exams at the high school start next week. So we have students taking AP exams in person next week and the week after. These students have worked very hard. Their commitment to their AP, the opportunity to earn college credit, is a very important opportunity for them. And they fear being quarantined for their AP exam and not being able to take it. And so we have a number of high school students who have requested to return 5 days in person, but not until after their AP exams. Of course, we will honor that. I was at the middle school today, and I learned that we have a couple requests of students who are becoming a bar or bat mitzvah in the next several weeks. And again, don't want to be quarantined for their in-person bar or bat mitzvah. So of course, we will allow those students to be remote who need to be for extenuating circumstances. What we're really trying to do here is discourage the spontaneous decisions of just, oh, I'm tired, I'll just remote in. Of course, we have been encouraging parents to keep their children home all year if they're sick. And now we're going to allow those kids to actually be sick. So if your child is sick, yes, you should keep your child home from school, and they can be sick and they'll make up the work. If it's extensive, if it's more than a day, please call the school. We'll work something out. Of course, we're going to support all of our students. We want all of our students to be successful. We just don't want it to be as haphazard as it's been. And of course, students who are quarantined and have excused absences will be able to join remotely. We had a couple of questions, so I just want to address our COVID protocols will still be in place. We will still be using the Operoo. We are required, part of the New York State guidance for reopening includes health screening, and so Operoo meets the screening mandate, and so that's why we will continue it. And of course, we will be continuing with masks. Masks are mandated at the state level, at the county level. It's in all of the reopening guidance. I did receive some emails from parents requesting that we have some relief from the mask mandate. That is not in my power. And so we will continue wearing masks until we are told we no longer have to. Mr. Slicka, if you could proceed to the next slide. One of the questions asked about what we're expecting, what were the responses to the survey with respect to in-person learning. And so we see at the elementary level, we're between 76% and 93% returning in person for about an average of probably 85 or 86%. We have a couple of classes in each building that will be 100% in person. In most of the building, it's 2 or 3 classes. At RP Connor, we have 8 classes that will have 100% in-person learning. That's very exciting. At the secondary level, the middle school, we're expecting about 70% attendance in person overall, with 85% of 6th graders attending in person, 61% of 7th graders, and 64% of 8th graders. At the high school, the numbers are a bit lower, as were the number of responses. So this data is based on the approximately, it was a little over 900 responses out of the 1,500 students at the high school. We only had responses for 900 of them. Some, of course, were from multiple children in a family. And our estimate is that 49% of our 9th graders will be returning in person, 38% of our 10th, 23% of our 11th, and 37% of our 12th graders. While I wish those numbers were a little bit higher, I also recognize that our high school students have lots of other conflicts, that they don't want to risk being quarantined for. I will say I'm excited that our 12th grade numbers perked up a bit. I think it's a great opportunity, for seniors to have their last moments, in the halls of Suffern High. I also hope that as we return, more of our high school students will come back. The good news is we'll have plenty of space for them. The only spaces, and I've said this at other times, the middle school is a little tight, but we are able to go down to 3 feet between classrooms. And we do have a number of classrooms who will be, at that 3 to 4 feet range. But with masks, that's well within the most recent guidance. So that is really a summary that addresses the specific questions that were sent to us via an email. Mr. Coronado and Ms. Mermelstein, if you would go ahead and turn the chat on. I'll also just, while they're doing that, thank them. They are our behind the scenes dream team who make all of our Suffern streams happen. So thank you very much. To Mr. Coronado, our Director of Technology, and Ms. Mermelstein, our PR specialist, communications specialist.
Thank you, Lee. The chat is now enabled. So if anybody has any questions, they can post them in there.
All right. And we'll give a few seconds for that. Mr. Schlicka, I heard you say this tonight, and I heard you say it at the last budget workshop, but I think it's really bears repeating. When you talked about what did you call it, a structured budget?
A structurally balanced budget.
Structurally balanced budget. I thought that was just a really great way of saying it, and I like your explanation. So maybe while we're giving people a chance, you could just repeat what that means, a structurally balanced budget.
Certainly. In the simplest terms is, again, I want to be able to fund reoccurring expenditures like payroll with reoccurring revenues like foundation aid that we can count on from year to year to year, and our taxes that we count on from our very generous taxpayers. When you do things like add one-shot revenues, for example, federal aid, or even state aid or grants or things like that, and you fund things like payroll with those, and grants come and go, and so do one-shot revenues like what's happening right now from the federal government to our state government. And we've lived this once before in a prior era, and around 08, 09, where the federal government could only do it for 1 year. So although we've been promised basically for the next 3 years our foundation aid formula to be finally paid in full, if you will, for lack of better words. I think those are the right words. I'm not so sure that they can fulfill that because, again, with what's happening across the state and jobs and income tax and property tax and sales tax that the state depends on to be able to fund our schools, those are down significantly. And until those are able to come back up, we all hope for the best. And, but in any case, we all like to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And hopefully we have, a great outcome overall. But I think the board did a great thing by saying, I think let's err on the side of caution. And let's wait a year and see how this plays out and make sure that we're not behind the 8 ball, so to speak, and put ourselves in a situation where we're depending on one-shot revenues to fund our payroll. So kudos to them and to the public for their support.
Thank you. Jenny, do we have any questions yet?
No, but just a reminder, if people don't see the chat, they should refresh their screen and or go out of the live and come right back in. So we'll give it another moment or two to see if that was the case.
Okay. We know that, not everyone's able to watch tonight. So we know that many people will watch this after the fact when it's no longer live. So I'll just remind people that if you have any questions regarding reopening, you can email communications@sufferncentral.org. You can also email reopeningteam@sufferncentral.org. Reach out to your child's teacher, counselor, principal with any questions.
Yeah, there are no questions.
Okay. Well, I want to thank again Mr. Coronado, Ms. Mermelstein, Mr. Schleicha for joining me. I hope folks are able to watch this at some point and gather the information. Again, I want to express my condolences to the Zangrilli family and my thoughts and prayers with the other students involved for a full recovery. So thank you all. Have a good night.